Disaster for Prince Harry in Canada. What should have been a light-hearted public appearance turned into one of the most humiliating moments of his post-royal life.
Given that level of scrutiny, I think I'd even worn a Yankees hat. Okay, maybe not a Yankees hat, but you get the dynamic.
The crowd wasn't laughing, they were booing, and it all started with a hat, a simple LA Dodgers cap that somehow managed to offend an entire Commonwealth audience.
Disaster for Prince Harry in Canada as his LA Dodgers faux pas sees him booed on stage by furious members of the Commonwealth.
Harry had tried to laugh it off, cracking a joke about his bald spot and the bright floodlights shining down on him. Given that level of scrutiny, he said, I think I'd even wear a Yankees hat.
Presenting them has been nothing but a traitor in recent weeks. From the lad who used to be a bit of a cheeky chappy, just doesn't cut it anymore as a miserable 40-something.
Second, the 900,000 watt floodlights shining down on an ever-increasing bald spot. Given that level of scrutiny, I think I'd even worn a Yankees hat. Okay, maybe not a Yankees hat, but you get the dynamic.
But the crowd didn't bite. They didn't find the joke charming. They found it tone-deaf. Here was a man who once represented them standing on stage in Canada, a country that still recognises his father as head of state, and trying to turn a PR blunder into self-deprecating comedy. The irony, this whole fiasco reportedly began because Meghan wanted them to appear matchy-matchy at a baseball game linked to one of her product launches. What should have been a quiet, respectful remembrance trip became yet another viral moment of misplaced priorities. The former cheeky royal trying to charm a crowd that clearly didn't want to be charmed. And the boos weren't just noise, they were a statement. To many Canadians, Harry no longer feels like one of their own. To them, he's become a Hollywood mouthpiece, a man out of touch with the duty he left behind. The hat may have sparked the storm, but the resentment had been brewing for years. But this was only the beginning. What unfolded next exposed just how far Prince Harry has drifted from the people he once represented. It was supposed to be simple, a remembrance trip to Canada, a chance for Prince Harry to honour veterans, reconnect with the Commonwealth and quietly rebuild some of the dignity he'd lost since stepping down from royal duties.
And he spent his entire remembrance trip to Canada trying to deal with the hat faux pas, which only happened because his wife dragged him to this baseball match that he knew nothing about to try and promote the launch of her new flop food products.
Canada has always been a soft spot for him, the country where he and Meghan first escaped the UK, where they briefly dreamed of a new, quieter life. But this time, things felt different. The warmth was gone. When Harry arrived in Toronto, cameras followed him everywhere. His every move felt like a test. This was the Commonwealth, after all, not Hollywood. Every word, every gesture mattered. Canadians still carry deep respect for the monarchy, but they also have little patience for what they see as Harry's mixed messages.
As Hans on X pointed out, so Harry's finally trying to make fun of himself. Probably the first time I've ever seen him do it. He's finally listening. During his speech, he discussed his baldness and said, I wanted to wear a Yankees hat. The crowd started booing him. What a joker.
The royal rebel who keeps cashing in on the crown. So when he appeared at a public event smiling beneath the Los Angeles Dodgers cap, it didn't sit right. That small choice, the wrong team in the wrong country, struck a nerve. Canada's own Blue Jays had just been knocked out of the World Series, and here was Harry cheering for their rivals. The symbolism was sharp. To many, it felt like another reminder that he's no longer one of them.
I think you'd like to say it all about wearing that LA Dodgers hat last week and getting into hot water.
LA Dodgers hatgate. Well, firstly, I would like to apologise to Canada for wearing it. Secondly, I was under duress. There wasn't much choice. I was invited to the LA Dodgers box, or the dugout, by the owner himself, so I was doing what I thought was the polite thing to do. But I'm going to wear this from now on to make sure I don't make any more of those mistakes. But the other piece to this was, as you could probably relate, when you're missing a lot of hair on top and you're sitting under floodlights, you'll take any hat that's available. So, Game 5, Game 6, Game 7, I was Blue Jays throughout. Now that I've admitted that, it's going to be really hard for me to return back to Los Angeles. But no, I'm very sorry to the Canadian public. Devastated that the Blue Jays lost, but go Jays.
That the prince who once stood for tradition has become a man of misplaced loyalties and Hollywood optics. Behind the scenes, sources said Meghan had pushed for the appearance. It tied neatly to her new brand launch, an American-style PR move that ignored the delicate politics of royal visits. The couple showed up in the owner's box, smiling for the cameras, unaware they were walking into yet another storm. By the time Harry took the stage days later, the backlash was already brewing online. Headlines called it Hatgate. Commentators accused him of being tone deaf, and when he tried to laugh about it in Canada, and that's when the boos came. But the hat was just the spark. The real explosion came from what the crowd believed it represented. A prince who no longer understands the people he's speaking to. It started as a joke but ended as a headline. The Hatgate fiasco became the latest example of how quickly a small royal misstep can spiral into a global spectacle. When Harry appeared at a Major League Baseball game in Los Angeles wearing a Dodgers cap, most fans brushed it off. But when he brought that same energy into Canada, the land of the Blue Jays, it became something else entirely. The optics were brutal. Here was a prince once seen as the embodiment of Commonwealth unity.
Even talking about this, why are you apologizing? Why did you do any of this? We know he has other ball caps he could have worn, but his wife wanted them to basically be matchy-matchy. And so it's just sort of obnoxious, and I can't buy PR, and just was complete. And then later to the Blue Jays goes, well, I was rooting for you games 5, 6, and 7. I'm like, but what about?
It's like that's all he has to say. And I mean, look, he was going through that date night with total duress. Mm-hmm. It was all done, Brittany, because things move so fast at the moment in the world of the Sussexes. But remember, she was launching her new Was Never products that day. So she needed to get the headlines. This was how she did it.
Cheering for an American team while visiting a Commonwealth nation. The timing couldn't have been worse. Canada had just watched its own team fall short in the postseason and emotions were high. So when Harry later joked about the hat during his speech, I'd even wear a Yankees hat, the crowd didn't laugh. They booed loudly. Social media exploded. Traitor trended across Canadian Twitter. Commentators called it tone deaf and embarrassing. The public didn't just see a hat, they saw what they believed was proof of how disconnected Harry had become. Every tabloid from The Sun to Daily Mail ran clips of the awkward moment.
Something to that effect. And he's actually worse, I think, because Harry's just holding on to these little tufts of hair in the front because the rest of it just looks unbelievable.
Replaying the boos in slow motion. And the contrast was clear. The man once hailed as the fun, relatable royal now looked like a lost celebrity trying too hard to stay relevant. Behind the scenes, sources claimed the Dodgers' appearance was part of Meghan's PR push for her new lifestyle brand. It was meant to be a soft-focused date night, a way to keep the couple visible, but it backfired spectacularly. What should have been harmless publicity turned into humiliation, with Harry apologising on national TV the very next day. He tried to explain it away, saying he only wore the cap because of the floodlights and his balding head. But the apology did little to help. It sounded rehearsed, even awkward, and only made him look more defensive. And the damage was done. To many Canadians, the prince who once served with pride now looked like a man performing apologies for the cameras. The boos weren't just about baseball. They were about betrayal, misplaced loyalty, and a growing belief that Harry no longer knows who he represents. And as the laughter died down and the headlines took over, another question began to form. If Harry's lost the crowd abroad, what does that say about the loyalty left at home? What made the entire Hatgate episode sting even more was what it revealed underneath. A prince no longer sure of who he is or where he belongs. For years, Harry's story has been caught between two worlds. The duty-driven traditions of the royal family and the celebrity-fueled freedom of Hollywood. And in Canada, that conflict finally showed itself in public.
And Prince William stood up and took notice at how easy it was. So before, everyone had been saying, oh, you need an act of parliament, all this stuff. And then he just saw his father sign a writ. And he was like, oh, that is how it's done. And this is how it's going to be done in the future. Now, we've all talked about how he wants a slimmed down monarchy. And one of the reasons he does is because there's a big risk for embarrassment, as we again saw with Andrew, with people off doing their things, and especially with Meghan and Harry still attempting, even though they were told not to, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Once, Harry was the people's prince, the soldier who walked behind his mother's coffin, the veteran who connected with ordinary people through his honesty and humour. But those qualities now feel buried beneath staged PR moments and polished brand tie-ins. His speeches, once heartfelt, now sound filtered through advisors. His jokes, once genuine, now fall flat. The man who once symbolised relatability now feels scripted. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, his brother Prince William seems to be thriving in contrast. William's trip to Brazil drew praise. Confident, composed and dignified. Harry's trip, by comparison, ended in boos and mockery. That comparison wasn't lost on anyone. The British press jumped on it instantly. One brother rebuilding the Crown's image, the other tearing his own apart. Even among royal watchers, there's a growing sense that Harry's identity crisis has gone too far. He's no longer the cheeky prince nor the rebel soldier. He's a man trying to balance royal legacy with American celebrity, and failing at both. Reports from royal insiders suggest that this tension has caused new friction behind the scenes, especially with King Charles and Prince William, who are reportedly exhausted by Harry's unpredictable media stunts. And while Harry insists he's carving his own path, the public sees something else. A man who once stood for duty, now drifting further into self-promotion. In Canada, the contrast couldn't have been sharper. The veteran who once wore military medals now making jokes about baseball caps. It was a symbolic shift and everyone noticed. But behind Harry's shaky public image is another powerful influence, Meghan Markle. And according to insiders, her latest branding move may have played a bigger role in this disaster than anyone realised. If there's one thing people agree on, it's that nothing Harry does happens in a vacuum anymore, especially when Meghan Markle is involved. Behind almost every public appearance, every speech and every viral headline, there seems to be a coordinated plan, or at least an attempt at one. And the Hatgate disaster was no different. And according to royal insiders and entertainment reporters,
according to your sources, the brothers clashed earlier this week. The timing isn't great for Harry.
No, I mean, listen, my sources are saying that William no longer recognizes his brother. He basically says he doesn't know who this kid is. Harry has become petulant. He's become vengeful. He's very angry at all times. And William's just kind of like, hey, who the heck are you? And yes, they do blame Meghan. Now, I don't like to blame one person for another person's actions. Everyone has their own responsibilities. However, they say it's been a marked difference ever since Harry has gotten with Meghan, and he now feels he has to protect her and, defend her at all costs, even when there's bad behavior involved.
The Dodgers' appearance wasn't just a casual date night, it was tied directly to Meghan's new lifestyle brand, a venture that, at the time, was preparing to launch. The goal was simple: keep their faces in the headlines, remind Hollywood they're still relevant, and wrap it all in the glow of an ordinary couple out at the game narrative. But instead of charm, it came across as strategy. And Canadians, already sceptical, saw right through it. When Harry later joked about his hat during a remembrance event, the backlash intensified. To critics, it looked like he was using a serious occasion to clean up a PR mess created by his wife's team. The same charm that once disarmed people now looked forced, even desperate. The once fun royal who could make the public laugh now seemed like a spokesperson trying to sell damage control. And Meghan's influence only deepened that perception. Her team's obsession with visibility, the photo ops, the product tie-ins, the carefully timed leaks, has made even Harry's smallest gestures actions feel rehearsed. For the couple's detractors, the symbolism was obvious. A prince once defined by service, now being steered by strategy. What made the situation worse was timing. Meghan's brand launch was drawing criticism for being disconnected from reality.
I'm just going to name some famous lawyers, and I'd love to know if you think that they would get a job at your firm or not, okay? Do you want to hire Miranda Hobbs from Sex and the City?
Yes.
She'd fit in.
She'd fit in, yeah.
Elle Woods, Legally Blonde.
Oh, yes.
I sense you might say to everyone, Erin Brockovich.
Definitely.
Yes.
Annalise Keating.
Oh, Annalise. That's How to Get Away with Murder, Viola.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Ally McBeal. She was a little neurotic.
Yes. Callista Flockhart. Yes.
Meghan Markle, Rachel Zane from Suits. She was paralegal.
I haven't seen that one.
I haven't seen Suits either.
Expensive products, vague messaging and questionable timing given global headlines about royal tensions. So when Harry stepped into Canada representing the same family his wife's PR often undermines, it was a powder keg waiting to blow. By the time he stood under the floodlights apologising for a baseball cap, it wasn't just about the Dodgers or the Blue Jays, it was about perception. Meghan's brand-first mindset and Harry's eagerness to please collided with public exhaustion, and the crowd let them know it. But the real consequences were still ahead. Because the boos in Canada didn't just echo across the stadium, they reached Buckingham Palace. And what came next would reignite old wounds inside the royal family itself. The reaction from Canada was swift, but the ripple effects reached all the way back to London. Inside royal circles, Hatgate wasn't treated as a minor embarrassment. It was viewed as another example of Harry's tone deafness, proof that he's lost all sense of the royal image. Palace insiders reportedly found the incident humiliating, especially since it happened during the same week Prince William was representing the crown in Brazil for the Earthshot Awards. The contrast couldn't have been more glaring. While William stood before world leaders talking about climate innovation, Harry was trending online for getting booed over a baseball cap. British tabloids didn't miss the opportunity to draw comparisons. Headlines labelled William as the steady statesman and Harry as the lost prince. And for once, even some of Harry's former defenders found it hard to disagree. Behind the scenes, things weren't any better. Reports claimed that King Charles and senior palace aides were privately furious, frustrated that Harry's actions keep pulling attention away from the monarchy's efforts to modernise its image. With Charles's health already under intense public scrutiny, the last thing the family needed was another wave of controversy surrounding the Duke of Sussex. For Harry and Meghan, though, the Canadian backlash may have been a wake-up call. Public sympathy, especially in the Commonwealth, has worn thin.
And got involved on the volleyball, the beach volleyball pitch, and of course, he has embraced writing, William is a heartthrob again. Yet Harry is so clearly uncomfortable with his looks now. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, how even since Spare there has been such a marked
Your king, which I'm sure definitely helps a bit. But Harry could have been very successful as well in the role as Spare. But part of Harry's chip on his shoulder is that he resents his brother for being the heir and being more important than he is. And then you factor in all the stuff with Meghan.
And this is like history repeating, Brittany, because it is the diary clashes not just from his younger brother, but also his father, King Charles, and the timing of that investiture for David Beckham. So let me take you through this.
Many who once admired their decision to break free now see it as self-promotion disguised as independence. Every appearance, every podcast, every brand move is interpreted as another attempt to stay relevant rather than sincere outreach. And that's the real damage. The boos in Canada weren't just noise, they were a sign of fatigue. People are tired of the spectacle, tired of the drama, tired of watching a prince who once stood for service turn into a headline machine. Still, for Harry, this might be the moment that forces reflection. His speech may have failed, but the message from the public was crystal clear. They don't hate him. They're disappointed in him. They wanted the old Harry back, the soldier, the humanitarian, the man who stood for something beyond brand deals and media interviews. Whether he can find his way back to that version of himself remains to be seen. When you strip away the headlines, the royal drama and the social media noise, what's left is a simple truth. Prince Harry is lost. He's no longer the carefree royal who won hearts with his honesty and humour, but he's not fully a Hollywood insider either. He's stuck in between too royal for celebrity culture, too celebrity for royal life. And the problem with being caught between worlds is that neither side fully accepts you. The British press sees him as a defector, the American elite sees him as a brand, and the global public, once fascinated by his rebellion, is now growing weary of his contradictions. Even Meghan's influence can't shield him from that reality. Her power lies in reinvention, a talent for turning criticism into opportunity. But Harry's identity is built on tradition, structure, and a sense of belonging that Hollywood can't offer. Without the royal framework he grew up in, he seems adrift. Every attempt to reclaim relevance, whether through memoirs, interviews, or brand tie-ins, only makes the disconnect more obvious. The irony is painful. The man who once fought to be seen as his own person now feels defined by everything he's trying to escape. And that's why the boos in Canada hit so hard. They weren't just a rejection of his joke. They were a reflection of something deeper. People don't recognise him anymore. As the lights dimmed after that disastrous speech, Harry smiled awkwardly, pretending it didn't hurt. But anyone watching could see the truth. The crowd's reaction had shaken him. For a man raised on applause and ceremony, hearing open disapproval from people who once admired him was a brutal reality check. The Hatgate moment might seem trivial in royal history, but it marked a turning point. It exposed how fragile Harry's public image has become and how much harder it will be to win back the trust of the Commonwealth he once represented. For Canada, it was just another celebrity misstep. For the royal family, it was confirmation of what they feared for years, that Harry's path away from duty might also be a path away from respect. And for Harry himself, it was a mirror, like one that reflected the price of leaving the palace, the pressures of fame, and the reality that not every crowd is still on his side. And because sometimes it's not the critics who define a downfall, it's the silence between the boos, when even the people who once believed in you have stopped clapping.